Minister of Tourism tours Front Street and the boardwalk. CEO of the Princess Juliana International Airport says local contractors will be given work. And Chairman of Parliament disappointed with the CFT's no-show for the second time. Those are the headlines for Thursday, September the 10th, 2020. Good evening, viewers. This is SXM Daily News. I am Valerie from Putin, thanking you so much for joining me this evening. And as usual, we have a full newscast for you, so let's get started. In our first story, the House of Parliament was to sit in a Central Committee meeting of Parliament earlier today at 10:30 a.m. regarding an update and further elucidation on the CFT's advice regarding financial support needed for St. Martin as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, financial alternatives for St. Martin, and an explanation from the CFT as to under which authority they currently operate. However, they were a no-show, and the Chairman of Parliament, the Honourable Rolando Bryson, who was to chair the meeting, was to say the least visibly disappointed and elucidated to the fact that the CFT has not reported to Parliament regarding any of the aforementioned items in the agenda points in the last 6 months. He expounds further.
Members of Parliament, the purpose of today's meeting would have been to have the CFT, the College Financieel Toezicht, with us today in a Central Committee meeting to update us on various current issues regarding the finances of the country. However, this is now the second time an effort to have a central committee, of which they are normally open, and it is the prerogative of Parliament whether the meetings are open or not. The CFT has not shown up for this meeting today. To give a little bit of an outline, and I'm not going to go too much into a historical of it, but on January 31st, Parliament received a request from CFT for a closed-door meeting with Parliament's Finance Committee. The CFT was notified by my person that being that it is a debate on the national budget and that in accordance with our rules of order, it is Parliament that would decide whether a meeting is public or not. I explained that the meeting will be convened, but it would be an open session with an option that of further deliberation in a closed door setting can take place if there are other items deemed to be indeed sensitive in nature. The meeting was then convened for February the 17th, and that was a no-show. I gave the opportunity to various members of Parliament to point or give their positions on the matter, which was done. And various members of Parliament did point out that they believe it is quite disrespectful for the CFT to not show up to Parliament and determine for their own whether they should be here in a public setting or not. Another point that has been raised by various members of Parliament is the fact that for many years, when the CFT has been coming to the closed-door meetings, shortly thereafter, all of the so-called sensitive information that is done in the closed-door setting is then completely revealed to the public in their customary press conference. Members of Parliament, I again, 6 months later, have tried to ask the CFT, in accordance with the principles of openness and transparency, and for the fact that what we are debating is not something that I believe should be secret in nature, the national budget and the reforms needed for the country, which they are advising on, are something that I believe the members of Parliament should be able to have in a public discourse. A letter was sent to the College Financieel Toezicht in that regard, and that letter has been since shared by email with the members of Parliament. It has highlighted that in Article 4, Paragraph 1, sub C of the Rijkswet Financieel Toezicht, Curaçao and St. Martin, that they have what is called, quote, a reporting responsibility to the Parliament of St. Martin. Looking at the P drive and various communications received from the CFT has not reported to Parliament in any of the aforementioned items in the agenda point in the last 6 months.
And SXM Daily News will have more of the Central Committee meeting of Parliament in tomorrow's broadcast. In other news, Governor of St. Martin, His Excellency Eugene B. Holliday, speaking at the opening of the parliamentary year 2020-2021 on the payroll support, explained the introduction of the 3-month stimulus support, the SSRP. The governor explained that the program was designed to keep money flowing to workers, businesses, and the most vulnerable among us.
In keeping with its priorities, government, facing the economic fallout of these exceptional circumstances, decided to introduce a 3-month stimulus and relief program, the SSRP, for the period April through June of this year. The program was designed to keep money flowing to workers and businesses and to protect the most vulnerable among us. The SSRP consists of payroll support for impacted businesses and income support for sole proprietors and unemployed persons. The program, somewhat downscaled, was funded with liquidity support from the Netherlands following complex discussions and disagreements regarding conditions for financing. In addition, government has and continues to take measures to improve the living conditions of our elderly and vulnerable population. Having increased the general pension age to 65 and the pension amount to 1,240 guilders in 2020, the government will now focus on a targeted approach for groups who need assistance the most. Groups such as those without a second-tier pension and those with a partial AOV. Looking ahead, government is, as a result, also working on the development and implementation of the social registry system funded by the Trust Fund at the World Bank. The social registry system will provide for the mapping of the most vulnerable in our society. This with the objective of improving the delivery and quality of services.
And in other news at this time, Minister of Justice, the Honorable Anna Richardson, is still hard at work with her portfolio. She gave the press an update on the much-awaited and anticipated function book earlier this week at the Council of Ministers' weekly press briefing.
On Friday, September 4th, 2020, the Project Group Function Book Ministry of Justice was established by ministerial decree. During a small ceremonial moment, the minister responsible for all government-related human resources matters, Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Prime Minister Sylveria Jacobs, signed the ministerial decree laying the legal basis for the project group. As a reminder, the project group is tasked with the implementation of a new function book for the entire Ministry of Justice and to update the legal position of the police department. The project group is comprised of a steering committee and a work group with representatives from the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of General Affairs, and the Ministry of Finance. The combination of ministers and secretary generals in the steering committee will ensure progress on all levels of government. Moreover, the work group will be supported by the other personnel and external expertise depending on the phase in the process. During the monumental meeting last Friday, the steering committee and work group were briefed on their roles and responsibilities to further advance the process. Having established a project group with a work group dedicated to meeting the deadlines is a definite milestone for our justice workers, and we expect to complete a significant aspect of the function books by or before the end of the year. Completion and implementation of the function books remains among my top 5 priorities as Minister of Justice.
And still to come, Prime Minister explains the reasons for delays with the government's agenda. And I'll have the details to that story and much more when SXM Daily News returns.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Mega Wadi is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching SXM Daily News, and I'm Valerie Van Putten. Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Sylvania Jacobs, speaking at the Council of Ministers' weekly press briefing, explained the reason for delays of the government's agenda since the breakout of the pandemic COVID-19.
As you know, our agenda has been dominated by the response to the outbreak of the coronavirus, but we cannot lose sight for the long-term development needs of this country. And so trying to multitask on that level is what we as government continue to do. So first, containing the outbreak of the virus, supporting the schools and the business community, trying to prevent as much as possible layoffs and protecting the most vulnerable within our society. And working together to jumpstart the economy, diversifying the economy, and ensuring that the reforms that are so hard needed, that at least the ones that do not require a large injection of funding, can be done as soon as possible, while collaborating with all sectors of our society. I would like to continue to ask persons to look into our National Development Vision, which has been published, the governing program, which will also soon be published, and to remind the people of St. Martin that together we can and we will beat this virus, as well as bring back the hope that we need in terms of, communities working together, those who are more progressive and more, let's say, financially able, helping those who are not, so that we can see true resilience, even though I've heard lately that's an overused word. No one can decide what is overused for us as long as we continue to stand strong in face of all the challenges that we are currently facing.
And as we continue with our series with the Princess Juliana International Airport and the rebuilding of the airport terminal, Chief Executive Officer at the Princess Juliana International Airport, Mr. Brian Mingo, when asked how many locals will be given contracts in the bid for work at the airport, Mr. Mingo has confirmed that there will be work for locals with the rebuilding of the airport terminal.
So one of the programs that me and Mirtu sit down on, and it's always the case when you have large projects, especially on the islands in the Caribbean, is that you have that the project is outside of the capabilities of local contractors. So we said, okay, let's do a program, let's see how we can do this. Do a fair, do first a business fair or a project fair, where we invite international contractors with the local contractors, but we need someone to bring this message across. So we spoke to the Chamber of Commerce, and we had a meeting with the Chambers of Commerce already, and to tell all of the local contractors to make sure, register. Let's look for a way of registering and making sure that everyone did the filing and they're up to date with their Chamber of Commerce documents, because the last thing you want is that you apply for painting the building, for instance, but you didn't pay your taxes of last year. So we do need to look at these things because we're also being watched at. I mean, we need to, the days of long, hey, listen, you come, you paint this, those days are not, those days, I hope they come back, but it's not there today. Yeah, exactly. So we do have to look and do the due diligence on all of these items. So we had a meeting with the chamber and said, listen, let's do this fair, where we can let everyone explain what we're busy with, and of course that everyone can participate. Now, one of the selection components also is that
criteria.
We will have to make sure that these international providers will use the local content, local participation. But is it enough? We also find that we should also, contribute in making sure that and promote this, that using local, local, especially the way the economy is, The economy really needs to get a little boost. A project like this, it's a sizable project. We're talking over 100 million. Can contribute in trying to revive some of this, crisis that we have in the market today. So it would be a great idea to have locals to work.
Now, turning to our weather forecast for September the 10th, 2020. At 11 a.m. this morning, the center of Tropical Storm Paulette was located about 940 miles east-northeast of St. Martin, and the center of Tropical Storm Rene was located about 1,790 miles east of St. Martin. Based on the projected paths, these systems are not expected to pose a direct threat to St. Martin. The Meteorological Department of St. Martin will continue to monitor these systems and update the public accordingly. So the outlook through Saturday midday, partly cloudy, becoming cloudy at times with isolated showers. Now, let's turn to your 3-day forecast. And still to come, General Secretary of the WICSU PSU says he is not disappointed, but there can be areas of improvement. And we'll have the details to that story and more when SXM Daily News returns.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit wib-bank.net/quick-login.
Welcome back, viewers. This is SXM Daily News. And as we also continue with our series on unionism on St. Martin, General Secretary of the WICSU PSU, Reginald Bakari Arundel, speaking to our newsroom regarding unionism on St. Martin, says that he is not disappointed, but there can be areas of improvement. Mr. Arundel says that the trade unions on St. Martin have great potential to direct the development of this nation.
Disappointing. I don't know if I can use the word disappointing. I prefer to use areas of improvement. Okay. Yes. Why do I say so? I say so because I believe that the trade union movement on St. Martin has great potential to direct the development of this nation. I believe no one is better suited than the working class to be able to bring forward and influence policies that will directly impact them. At times, though, I believe that we as trade unionists, I believe that we as members oftentimes shy away from our power, from our ability in order to play a more active role. I believe that at times we narrow our interests specifically on working conditions and bargaining. I think forgetting that outside of the company, people have to go to work. People have to go home. People live in societies. People need quality of life and so forth and so on. So I think that besides just zooming in on wages, like bread and butter issues, I think the trade union movement on St. Martin needs to go into more social movement unionism, as is popular in Brazil, in the Latin American countries. For instance, we often talk about the importance of tourism to our island's GDP. But at the same, and of course tourism brings in jobs, brings in the foreign exchange and so forth and so on. However, the tourism product in and of itself leaves a lot to be desired. when we look at the containers in our, the growing number of containers in our capital, Valerie, you know, when we look at the amount of running water in the sewage, and we look at the garbage and so forth and so on, you know, it's a point of concern, because if persons are saying, hey, you know what, the beauty of St. Martin is not what what once was, they have options today. Okay, they can go to other islands who might be, you know, of a higher standard. And of course, what does that mean for workers? It means less employment, less income, and so forth and so on. So I only say that to say that at one point, there is an urgent need to go beyond the bread and butter issues and go into more of the social issues. I've seen trade unions in Trinidad, in Grenada, they weigh in on political discussions. You understand? In order to ensure that, come what may, the working class families are protected. Strangely enough, on St. Martin, when trade unions weigh in on these discussions, you are automatically branded as political and you're playing politics and so forth. And I would always remind members that there's nothing wrong with being political. When government signs a policy to increase the wage or which could have bearing on occupational health and safety, that is a political decision. Okay? So therefore, since it's a political decision, as unions, as workers, we should have a right to be consulted over decisions that will have bearing not only on our working condition but also on our lives. So I think we will need to go in that direction, you know, especially when we consider all of the discussions surrounding these conditions and reform entity and so forth and so on. I don't think it's a time to maintain our traditional role as trade unions. I think the time requires that we do some deep reflection in order to assess the way forward.
And still to come, Minister of Tourism tours Front Street and the boardwalk. And I'll have the details to that story when SXM News returns. Welcome back, viewers. And as we end this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening, Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Ludmila de Weaver, had a tour on Front Street and the boardwalk with the Ministry of VROMI, the Tourist Bureau, as well as the Ministry of Justice recently, in anticipation of the upcoming tourist season. The minister says that the tour was to take an assessment of the current conditions on the boardwalk as well as the beach, and she expounded further.
Tour of the boardwalk with the Tourism Bureau, representatives of the Ministry of VROMI, as well as the Ministry of Justice via the police force that's responsible for Phillipsburg area, as well as members of the cabinet. The general public is reminded that it is restricted to park vehicles on the boardwalk, and this will result in cars being towed. The purpose of this tour was to take an assessment of the current conditions on the boardwalk as well as on the beach. Part of this assessment resulted in a very lengthy list of plans that will take place over the next 2 months in preparation of the season, and notification will be going out to all the vendors of the beach to temporarily remove the structures on the beach in order to have the beach maintenance. There are certain parts of the boardwalk where the sand is higher than the boardwalk, and this needs to be leveled off. This is why we will be organizing a meeting with the vendors to provide them with the information and give them ample time, possibly about 2 weeks, to remove everything prior to this cleaning taking place. In addition to that, plans will be put in place for adding in more benches, removing of trash that has been there for quite some time, as well as implementing or placing garbage bins on the beach as well. Last week, Friday, on September 4th, we held a meeting with the Simpson Bay Marketplace vendors to clearly address the concerns brought forth by those vendors. These concerns range from management and the setup of the utilities, health guidelines, restroom maintenance, and allocation of addresses to joint inspections with the Ministry of ROMI. That's on September 17th. Present during this meeting were representatives again from the Department of ROMI, Public Health, the Fire Department, and Utilities Company GB. There was a temporary ministerial decree instituted after Hurricane Irma and Maria for the use of generators for the vendors. This decree was renewed in February 2020 for an additional 2 years. However, the current existing issues were not addressed in the extension. After handling these concerns last week, we have now put in plans in place to have running water, as well as the vendors being allowed to pay for electricity once the utility meters are installed. In regards to the inspectorate of the Ministry of TEAT, an has already been placed, but I would like to remind the public that due to circumstances related to COVID-19, the theoretical driving exams are suspended until September 21st. This administering of practical driving exams will continue. Of practical driving exams will continue as normal. Those candidates impacted by this will be contacted by the department if they already haven't been, and we apologize for any inconvenience this may cause.
And with that, viewers, we've come to the end of this edition of SXM Daily News for this evening. I am Valerie from Pitten, thanking you so much for joining me. And just a reminder that this and other programs are available online. Simply log on to stmartinmediacenter.com for viewing. And on behalf of the SXM Daily News team, we thank you for watching and plan on meeting you right back here again tomorrow.